Hello, and welcome to a Purpose Driven Marriage podcast. We are Dwayne and Nadine Stewart, and we love any and all things marriage. You've tuned into the right place if you're looking for actionable, practical tips to help you overcome real life obstacles common to real relationships. We're here to help you strive for a marriage as God has designed it and not as the world has defined it. Because why settle for a good marriage when you can have a great one?
Hey, y'all. I'm so excited to be back.
Welcome back to a Purpose Driven Marriage podcast.
Yeah.
Today, we're talking about one of Dwayne's favorite topics.
It is physical touch.
Physical touch. Surprise, surprise.
There are certain things that in life just makes you feel good about yourself. And that is one. Like when my wife comes up to me and hugs me from behind, or touches the back of my head, or just, gives me a kiss or sits next to me, it just creates a feeling within myself that I need it. You know what I mean? There's certain days where you really, really need it, and certain days where you just crave it, and that is it.
I'm guessing you're not alone, babe.
I know.
You're not alone.
I can't be.
No. Physical touch actually fosters so much emotional intimacy, right? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Physical intimacy, physical touch creates emotional
Intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And so that's why we're talking about it today, leading up to Valentine's Day, because we're now into February.
Yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit. I mean, we've had a couple podcasts in the past that talked about different love languages and things like that. But let's talk about physical touch and what that actually does to the body. There's a chemical change within the body that the physical touch kind of brings out. So let's talk about why. Why does that happen?
Well, that chemical reaction is that the oxytocin is being released, right? And when we talk about physical touch, we're not just talking about sexual touch, right? We're talking about hugging,
Yes.
holding hands, kissing, cuddling. All that stimulates the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is also called the love hormone, right? The love hormone, the bonding hormone, mothers and their babies, right?
Yeah, that's when you have a child and you want to be skin to skin, right? So baby's shirt is off, the mother's shirt is off, so you can just have
or even the dad.
Touch. Yeah, or dad.
Even the dad.
That's true. We did that too.
Yep. It's associated with an increase in trust, in bonding and emotional closeness.
It's just connection. It really is connection. Yeah.
Exactly. Between two people. But it has a whole lot of benefits. It can help to reduce stress.
Yeah. Yeah, it lowers cortisol levels.
It does.
Yeah. So when you think about the thing that creates like high blood pressure within you, anxiety, tension, and all those things, physical touch, the cuddling, the closeness that you create when you're with your spouse, that actually lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your anxiety, it lowers the tension that's in your body, and it makes you feel calm.
No, there's actually research that supports that, babe.
Yeah.
Because there's research that indicates that touch, right, from one's partner can actually help to alleviate the stress levels. In fact, one of the things that we promote a lot is, the 6-second kiss.
We did not a contest, but we did a challenge with the couples out there. Didn't we one time? Like you had to kiss your spouse for 6 seconds.
For 6 seconds.
Or hug for 20 seconds.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah, because that promotes the release of oxytocin. And so now especially on a day that I know Dwayne maybe had a stressful day at work, I would just come up and I'd wrap my arms around him and I won't let him go until I'm done counting to 20.
I'm like, okay, we're gonna be done with this.
It's just fun. I count out loud. I'm like, oxytocin, just trying to release the oxytocin.
You know what also creates a calmness within you and lowers cortisol levels?
What's that?
It's owning a dog.
Oh.
Did you know that, Nadine?
Yes, I have heard that.
With dog owners, and this is not a dog podcast, but when you own a dog, that also creates just a calmness within you. It lowers your anxiety and lowers your cortisol.
Right.
Yeah, long life.
Yeah.
More dogs, long life.
That is true. I've read that somewhere where you even just the act of petting the dog, but it's that touch.
It is relaxation.
Right? It's just it's that touch because I do this to you, it does the same thing.
Yes.
Right. And you know what else? I'm not sure if how you feel about this one, but there's studies that show that when a partner is holding their partner's hand, right? So like we're walking down the street somewhere, we're out in Seattle and we're holding hands. Just the mere act of me getting to hold your hand actually reduces my brain's response to threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reduces.
You feel protected.
I feel protected. And I laugh about that because I know that that's actually the opposite of what you want me to do. Because when we're out there walking around at night, you want me assessing the threat levels all around me. But instead I hold your hand. I'm like,
yeah. Well, quite honestly, I mean, tonight, that's where we're going to go outside.
Yeah, we are.
It's either going to be me holding your hand or me with my hand around your shoulder. Right. And well, number one, I do love to be close to you, but in that situation, it's more to be able to move you out the way whenever I need to, to avoid danger. So if there's something around the corner and I need to pull you away, then I can do that quickly because that's my job.
That's your job. But I think that's funny that, holding your hand, my brain is like, oh, there's no active threats around.
I'm glad you're relaxed, Nadine.
Yeah, you just relax. It's okay. Like no big deal. But that's how important physical touch is. Like it does so much. That chemical change you were talking about that happens in our bodies when we are engaging in touch, which is why it saddens me when I hear about couples that don't see the importance of it, or they look to deprive each other of just that privilege of being able to be held, to be cuddled with, or even.
Where does that come from though? Because I think sometimes, I don't know if it could be cultural, I guess it could be cultural, but it also could be just how you grew up. Like your family was not the family that likes to hug or say, I love you.
Well, not my family. My family was always hugging and saying, I love you.
Yeah.
What are you?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Not you.
Specifically,
I'm talking about people in general.
I was like, what family are you talking about?
This is what we're talking about here, Nadine. We're kind of talking about us, but not in this specific instance. But where does it come from?
Yeah.
If someone does not value touching and hugging and kissing and just showing affection in that way, it comes from where typically?
It comes from a number of different places. I mean, it could be a cultural, or when I say cultural, I don't just mean like ethnicity or like a country of origin, but cultural meaning like the family that you came from, because we create cultures even just within the communities that we live in, right? We create like a family culture within our own families. And so if that just didn't happen at home, but there are also cultural, thinking more broadly, that just physical touch is just not something that they do regularly. I have a lot of clients from very diverse backgrounds, and hugging, those types of things,
not part of it.
Don't do.
Yeah.
Or they don't do it often, right? It has to be a special occasion.
Showing appreciation sometimes, so, saying I love you, saying I'm proud of you, those types of things are.
Yeah, but there's also sometimes a negative incident, right? A bad incident that happened earlier in life, in childhood, maybe a previous relationship that makes even just the thought of being touched really, really difficult. And so they have to work through that. And then there's also some people where that was never taught as something that's okay, right? How many of us teach our kids that, hey, your body, it's just yours, don't let anyone touch it unless, exactly. And so we get into that mindset that being touched by someone else is bad, which is the good thing to protect yourself as a child, but there isn't really that permission that's given, hey, you're married now, so now it's okay. Like no one has that conversation with you.
When you're developing a relationship with somebody, then it's necessary. And sometimes actually even in the Christian community, I don't know if it's physical touch, but physical touch is like the gateway. It's like the gateway that leads to the next thing, which leads to the next thing, which in before marriage, sexual intercourse is definitely not okay, but it's shied away from so much that it may seem as a negative, right? To a point where you just have a negative connotation with hugging and any type of touch. And when you're married, then you got to reverse that.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, how hard is that to do? Because how do you go from associating touch with something that's negative to associating it to something that's supposed to be sensual and pleasurable and all that, and not feel like you're sinning in some way because you're now in a committed married relationship. And so a lot of that is, mindset, psychological, our history, right? And so I think that there needs to be, especially during like premarital counseling, there needs to be the conversation about this, about the role of physical touch in marriage, the importance of it, and why this is a gift that God has given us. Like we have permission to be able to do this. Right. Like I think we've said in one of our previous episodes when we were talking about sexual intimacy, how out of 66 books in the Bible, God devoted a whole book.
To sensuality.
Exactly. Between husband and wife. Like that's how important it is. He could have been talking about anything, but yet he chose to talk about the sensuality, this intimacy between husband and wife.
Right.
Because it's a gift and it's important in a relationship.
And it's encouraged.
It's
definitely encouraged.
Exactly.
It's funny because and it's not necessarily the sensual part, but when we talk about the cultural and then how you were brought up, when I met you, there was one thing that I was deficient in.
I'll let you tell the story, then I'll add on to it.
And I would say hugging was really not my thing. I didn't really know how to hug. I didn't really understand why it was that important. I think when it came to hugging, it was, the bro hug. You hug your boy, you know what I mean? And you move on, you know what I mean?
Gosh.
But it wasn't like you know how it is. It was not like a hug, but it's like boom, boom, real quick, and then we move on. But now I'm dating Nadine, who's my future wife, and she's like, dude, like that's how you hug?
It was terrible.
We need to work on that.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was like trying to hug poles, like multiple poles. There was no warmth to it. It was bony.
Yeah.
And not because you're bony, but because it was like you hugged like this.
It was very rigid.
Yeah, it was very rigid. And like your arms were much bigger than my size. And so there was a lot of space.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if it was because you were trying to be respectful. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know.
I think so.
But
I'm going to say that. I was trying to be respectful.
Yeah, well, it was a very unsatisfying hug. I was like, what is this? It's like hugging a rock.
If we're going to move forward with this relationship, you're going to have to learn how to hug me.
Oh, that was
basically what it was.
That was one of the first things I taught him. And it's funny because way, way, way later, I had people thanking me, hey, Dwayne gives great hugs. He's such a good hugger. And I'm at that point, I'm like, okay, now you need to like back off a little bit.
You created this, Nadine. So, I mean, I can't help but, share what you've already taught me.
But now I'm teaching him different types of
not in a negative way. Now we're going the opposite way.
Yes, the opposite way.
She wants me to go back to my old ways.
With everybody else.
With everybody else.
With everyone else. With me,
not you.
Yeah, with me, you give me all the special good hugs that I taught you, right? Yeah. I think it was last week when we talked about the 5 love languages. We talked about how physical touch is one of these 5 love languages and how important it is. And it's one of the ways that you can create that emotional bond in a relationship. So think about that, right? Like if my love language is physical touch and you didn't give hugs. Right? Or you didn't know how to give hugs. So because of that, you just weren't going to hug me.
Then even if I did hug you, you would still feel dissatisfied, like I didn't love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I didn't love you in the way that you probably wanted to be loved.
Yep.
So in that situation, and you would have to teach me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it helps to promote just such a healthier relationship. In fact, that's one of the benefits of physical affection in marriage. And it's so important. And I emphasize that because I know that that's one of those things that a lot of people misunderstand. They think, oh, it's a man thing. Anytime my husband wants to hug me, I'm thinking it's just because he wants to have sex. Right. And that's really a common misunderstanding. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, yes, it may lead to that. And yes, he may desire to be sexually intimate, but physical affection has so many benefits that are above and beyond just the sexual intimacy side of it. I mean, it helps to enhance relationship satisfaction. It's been found that couples who engage in regular physical affection, they report higher levels of relationship satisfaction.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, there's a study that found that increased touch like correlates with greater happiness in relationships.
So what you're saying is the more I touch you or the more you touch me, that just creates, we're just going to be happier as a couple.
Yes, it promotes that, but I think it has a lot to do with the oxytocin.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I wonder if it's because I only really know about me. Right. And I know that this is something that I just respond to because I just like to be touched. I love when you hug me. I love when you kind of sit next to me and all that that stuff. I wonder if it's a guy thing. You know what I mean? Because I think about the ways that males bond with each other and just with other people in general. Yeah. It's the bro hug. It's the chest bump. It's dap. You know what I mean? And then when you are going through all your hormonal stuff, you might wrestle or you might do a bunch of different things. And I was thinking back to even like in the 5th grade when you liked a girl. Yeah. And you didn't know how to show that you liked her. So you would push her hair. You would push her or you would pull her hair. Or you would bump her or whatever. You know what I mean? I was just thinking about that. I'm like, I wonder if there is something there. There's some sort of correlation there, but just something that just went through my mind.
Yeah.
I think it's just a testosterone guy thing.
Yeah. I used to think that. I used to think that same thing, but it was very much tied. So my perception of it was very much tied to sex. And after working with couples for years, I've now come to realize that, I've seen myself that women also have a need for that physical intimacy.
Right.
It's this
just in a different way, though.
Yeah, just in a different way. They like the physical intimacy, but it is because they feel emotionally connected. So for many of us women, we need to feel that emotional connection, and then it leads us to wanting that physical connection. And there's this, again, misunderstanding where people seem to assume that men need physical intimacy and the women need emotional intimacy, when in fact we need both.
Kind of the same.
Right? Yeah, because we experience that
One
same
leads to
release.
the other.
We experience that same release of oxytocin that you guys do. And so it's just that our definition of physical connection is just broad.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I can tell you though is that when we've gone through a period where we are really, really connected, where we're talking daily about specific things about a relationship, and you're hugging and all the things that kind of satisfy the physical touch part of it. During that period, I just feel a greater sense of connection.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And to a point where I look at you and I'm smiling and I'm looking at you and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what can I do? Is there something that she needs? And whatever. I'm just thinking about just the way I feel about you, and just thinking about my love for you, and those emojis where you have the hearts on your eyes. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? It seems a little corny, but it's real. You know what I mean? And I think that's a real thing. So if you want to create that within your relationship, I think it's important to continue to foster the environment so that we can allow those feelings to blossom.
Yeah. Well, it's all tied together, like
Mhm.
what you were saying, that the physical connection can lead to the emotional connection, and the emotional connection can lead to the physical connection. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, that emotional intimacy, when that's increased, it fosters that deeper sense of emotional connection that you
Yeah.
were talking about, where we both feel more valued,
Mhm.
we feel understood,
Yeah.
right? Which is huge for women. And we find ourselves even communicating better because now we're incorporating the nonverbal communication techniques through
Mhm.
touch,
Right.
right? When making bids to connect, for example,
Mhm.
oftentimes we can do that. Like, I'm gonna reach over and put my hand on your hand,
Yeah.
or I'm going to touch you like this because
Mhm.
I'm trying to connect with you. Or
Right.
maybe if there was a misunderstanding, my repair attempt would be trying to
To
hold
do
your
the same
hand to
thing.
do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Mhm.
Exactly. When we feel that emotional connection, we feel more free to even try to connect in that nonverbal way
Yeah.
that again
Mhm.
leads to feeling more valued. The bond is there. We're building trust. We
Mhm.
feel more understood.
Mhm.
And there's even additional research that indicates that affectionate touch, it's vital for our mental and physical health.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, I don't doubt it at all. The studies just validate it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But we've already
We're living it.
we've done our own experiment.
Exactly. We're living it. I
We've
see it
already
in my
done our own
clients.
clinical trial. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I see it in my clients all the time. Once they begin incorporating that, I see it when they're sitting on the couch in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can always tell how the week went
Yeah.
with how they sit down together,
Yeah.
right? Their body
They're either
language.
holding hands.
Oh my
or
goodness.
He has
Yeah.
his hand on her
On her lap
lip.
or on her leg.
Yeah.
Yes. Like you can always tell. And then you can kind of see her scooting in or
They're either
right.
this way
Yeah.
or they're
Yeah, exactly. Are they
trying.
far apart? Are
Right.
they together?
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. So if physical touch is so important,
Mm-hmm.
right, to foster that emotional connection and to increase that intimacy in
Yeah.
marriage, how do we incorporate it? How do we make sure that we're getting enough of that
Yeah.
in our relationship?
Well, I think it's just creating habits. It's
Mhm.
really just being thoughtful and intentional about what you do. And it's holding hands during walks. Maybe you go for a
Yes.
walk and you hold hands. It's when you get home and, I greet my wife,
Mhm.
I'm going to give her a kiss for 6 seconds. Or I'm going to
feels long.
I'm going to hug you for 20. You've done that to me, 20
Yeah,
seconds.
all the time.
You know what I mean? And it's just maintaining like good habits
Mhm.
so that these things do not get lost or overlooked. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Even at night, I mean, for us, what we try to do is we pray together, and we will at least spend a good half an hour to an hour just kind of hanging out, right? Either in
Yes.
front of the TV or on the bed before we go to bed or something like that. Those are the things that we try to do. Create those habits, because once you create those habits, you kind of yearn for them
You do.
and you miss them when it doesn't happen.
Oh yeah. One thing Dwayne and I noticed about us is, for whatever reason, he could be sitting on the couch and he could be sitting on the farthest edge
Mm-hmm.
of the couch. And because of these habits we've incorporated into our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
I will just automatically find the spot that would put me as close to him as
Mhm.
possible. And that's usually a space that only has like 6 inches.
Yes.
And somehow I'm like, oh, excuse me,
And
I'm just gonna
you're
squeeze
definitely
in
not
here.
6 inches wide.
I'm not.
So now
I'm
you're
just gonna squeeze in here a little bit and somehow find
bugging
it.
around.
Yes, then I've got my legs on him. Then I mean, you can't slide a piece of paper between us by that time.
I mean, I pretend like it's annoying because sometimes it kind of is. But at the same time, I like it because I know my wife is, who doesn't want their spouse to want to be next to you. So I'm good with it.
You're good with it.
Even if it looks like I don't like it at the moment, I'm still good with it.
Yeah. And there's also, when we incorporate these habits, one of the other things that we want to make sure we incorporate are these non-sexual touches, right? And so I know that people out there are like, my gosh, why does she keep avoiding sex? No, I'm not avoiding sex, right? Like, we've done a lot of episodes on sex.
Yeah.
We encourage that between husband and wife, but we're just talking about physical touch in general.
Yeah.
That also includes sexual touch, right? But we're talking about like cuddling. Like this morning, I remember waking up and I wrapped my arms and legs behind you and I whispered to him that I'm the big spoon.
Yeah. And I was a little spoon this morning.
Yeah, he was a little spoon. And so just that, like starting off our day with me trying to cuddle him in the same way that he would do for me.
Sometimes I do that. I don't know if you recognize it, but sometimes when I'm up and I work out, take a shower, and come back, and I'm like, okay, I think I got a little bit of time, and you're still warm in the bed. I'm like, let me jump in this bed real quick and give her a hug for like 5 minutes, and I know you appreciate it.
I do. I do.
I do too. So so doing things like that, I think is really important. Just being thoughtful and trying to create more opportunities for all these things to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just any opportunity to touch, just even throughout the day, you're walking by, you just touch each other, right?
Grab your butt.
Yeah, grab my
Something
butt.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's also making sure that you do incorporate the sexual touch in the relationship, because sexual intimacy, it's hard to have a thriving marriage when that doesn't exist.
Are there times when one spouse, I'm just going to say the woman in the relationship, it feels, maybe this is not their love language, so it kind of feels like it's too much? How do you navigate around that? There's a certain level of intimacy, a certain amount of touch that she's okay with, right? But then there's a point where she's like, okay, stop.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
You got to talk through
Different
it.
comfort levels.
You have to talk through it. And I would recommend really trying to understand the reason why, right? The reason behind it, because it's rare that you just wake up in your life one day and decide, you know what, I don't like being touched anymore. Right. And there are seasons, like there's a lot of moms that have told me, gosh,
I don't feel sexy.
Well, yeah, they don't feel sexy, or not just that, but they're raising a bunch of young kids that touch them all day, every day. And so they say that by the time their husband gets home, the last thing they want is to be touched again, right? Because they're on that physical touch overload. And so these are conversations that need to happen, right? It can't just be a decision that you make on your own and then your husband has no idea why this is happening and he's thinking he's the problem.
What did I do?
And so if you guys can talk through it, whatever the reason might be, whether it's something from your past, whether it's an insecurity, whether it's you're overloaded by being touched all day, by a bunch of children or whatever it might be.
Darn kids.
No, we have 6. We can't say that. But, these are conversations that need to happen, because if you can talk about it, you could find a way through it. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah.
And then there's also like different comfort levels.
Yeah.
And so maybe you collaborate, you find something that is good for the both of you.
Yeah.
Right.
A happy medium, somewhere in the middle, wherever, you get what you need as far as like the touch and the oxytocin and things like that. But then your spouse also doesn't get overloaded.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a fair middle balance area that you could be in.
Yes. And, it would benefit the relationship if somehow you found a way to begin reconnecting through that touch, right?
Yeah.
And it's just little by little. Maybe it's holding hands.
Yeah.
Maybe it's sitting on the couch together. Maybe it's a hand on the knee, right? And then you just kind of work your way from there.
Yeah.
And the more that you build up on those habits, like you said, the more you begin to yearn it, because once you're relaxed, right? Like you don't feel like there's any obligation that's attached to this non-sexual touch, you'll begin to experience the release of the oxytocin, the feel-good hormones. You'll begin to experience those same benefits, and then you want it more.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
The trust develops, the intimacy.
I hear what you're saying, because sometimes people will already equate the touch to, okay, well, if this is what you're doing right now, then I know what you're expecting later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we need to show our wives that we can yearn to do stuff like this, and it's okay, and we don't expect to have sex later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We're just doing it because we want to, right?
Yes.
And maybe because you need it, and we know that you want it. So I think that is important to kind of create that expectation or that understanding that it doesn't always have to lead to that, and we have to be good with it too.
Yeah.
We got to be good with it also. I think that's important, because I think we went through a period of that.
Mhm,
We went
we
through that
did.
period
Yeah.
before.
Early in our marriage when we
Yeah.
had all the little kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like there was a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm
Mhm.
working all day, got the kids and all
Mhm.
that. And sometimes I'm just exhausted and I want to cuddle. I
Mhm.
want the benefits of that emotional and
Yep.
non-sexual bonding,
Yep.
but I just didn't have it in me during that period to want to be sexually intimate every single time we
Yeah.
touched.
Right.
Right. Like I didn't want it to be where, hey, okay, I'm gonna let him
I'm
hug
gonna hug
me.
you.
Now who knows what that's
Yeah.
gonna turn into or what the obligations are that are attached to that,
Yeah.
right? And so I get it. We have a lot of moms with young children
Right.
that listen to this podcast. And
Mhm.
so, I see you. I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And for husbands, again, I'm not picking on the husbands, and because there's a lot of couples where the situation is
reverse,
reversed,
right.
right?
Mhm.
Where it's the wife that's like, gosh, I want more
Mhm.
sexual intimacy. But I would say that recognize the fact that physical touch creates these attachment bonds between you,
Mhm.
right? And at the end of the day, what I tell my couples all the time, your goal is connection.
Yeah.
That's your goal. And so whatever it is, it's going to lead to that connection is what you do,
Mhm.
right? That's what you do. And so physical touch is needed, even if it's just holding hands,
Yeah.
even if it's just the arm around the
Start with
shoulder.
something simple if that's the case.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And then as you feel the trust growing,
Mhm.
as you feel safe, as you feel understood, you
Mhm.
feel valued, you've got that,
Kind of grow it from
that
there.
exactly.
Expand.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And then I recommend that you keep expanding.
Yeah. So that's a challenge for everyone, is that if you feel like physical touch is lacking, if you feel like your connection is lacking in your relationship, this could be a good place to start.
Mhm.
And starting without the expectation of something that has to happen, some sort of
Yes.
sexual activity that has to happen. Find some times to cuddle, find some time to hug, find some time to a situation where you can just sit on the couch and sit next to each other and just hang out and talk. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I would
I think
even
those are important.
I'd even take it like just one step back,
Yeah.
and that is have the conversation that there isn't any
Yeah.
expectation and that
Yeah.
you really just want to be close.
Yeah. I'm
Right.
good
You
with
really
that.
just want to be close and
Mhm.
start with that 6-second kiss.
Mhm.
Start with a 20-second hug in the
Yeah.
morning, right before you guys leave. And
Yeah.
then now you're adding the 6-second kiss and the 20-second hug at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? When you guys
So
are
that's
seeing each other
so
again.
that's 40 seconds of hugging.
40 seconds of hugging, 12 seconds of kissing, right? Whatever it may take. Go for a walk, hold hands,
Yeah.
right? That's another small non-sexual touch.
Mhm.
And then you just kind of graduate from there.
Yeah. I think people will be amazed at what that does. It
Oh
really
my
does.
goodness.
Mhm.
My goodness. Yes. It
Yeah.
would be like you'll find yourselves actually yearning
Yeah.
that and just wanting more and more of that and just
Mhm.
developing greater connection, greater intimacy with each
Mhm.
other.
Yeah.
So we hope that has helped you guys.
Mhm.
We would love to hear, like, if you guys have any pointers on how to incorporate more of this into your relationship or the relationship of others, let us know.
Let us
Like,
know.
we love
Yeah.
the tips, and hit us up either on Instagram or send us an email, Nadine at apurposedrivenmarriage.com, or write some comments.
Yeah.
All right.
Do it.
So we will see you guys next time.